Welcome to the Right Now Show, presented by the Laguna Woods Writers Club. And welcome to the Right Now Show. I'm Charlie Redner.
And I'm Judy Saxon, and this is a program where we put the emphasis on writing and the arts.
Now, Judy, have you read anything interesting recently?
I have. I read a book called Revolution. It's a sci-fi book, and wow, does it keep your interest and turning the pages and the twists and the turns, and yes, it's wonderful.
I'm glad you said that because I know you brought the book, but I have it right here on my telephone, and that's on my next to read list.
You'll love it. You'll love it.
Thank you. Well, let's talk about our guests. Today, she has worked for over 25 years in communications and public relations at Disney Touchstone, worked in story development for independent production companies, and for many years, she also wrote creative pilot scripts for CBS, Fox, Discovery, and ABC television.
Wow.
She's the author of best-selling sci-fi Near Future, which is important, techno-thriller set in Silicon Valley and Washington. And it was released in 2015, and the second sequel is due out in October. So let's give a warm welcome to PJ Manny. Hi, PJ.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit about what the book is about?
Why, yes. Revolution is about Peter Bernhardt. He's a bioengineer who's developed brain-computer interfaces to help cure Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, etc. But there are people who think they can do things with it that aren't very therapeutic. They're weaponized, in fact. And they decide to take his technology. If he doesn't cooperate, they leave him for dead, and then he has to come back and wreak revenge and save the country and the world, as you do in these kinds of stories.
So that brings me to think, you say most of the things you wrote about were actually at the cutting edge of technology today. I know a woman who's just had 2 holes drilled in the top of her head and wires down to her with a equivalent to a pacemaker so it can stop any involuntary movements that she has.
Wow.
That's correct. The technologies that I describe were all in research and development, and in fact one of them, which is the prosthetic hippocampus, the hippocampus is the part of our brain that records short-term memories and then decides will we keep this memories long-term or not, that's actually been put into the first humans. So these are real technologies that are all being developed right now.
Oh my goodness.
So when you say interface with the brain, you're talking about being able to actually put things in the brain that aren't there now, or keep things in the brain that were there that we don't want
exactly.
to lose?
So like a prosthetic arm replaces the arm that's missing, a brain prosthetic would replace parts of the brain that have either been damaged through disease or to basically replace them so that they're being used like those organs within the brain.
See, I have a bionic eye already, but I didn't put it in for reading. I could have, and if I don't want to later, I can have another lens put in. But you're saying if we're doing this to the brain, are we crossing some line here that maybe shouldn't be crossed?
Well, it's really interesting. Think about it. We have lots of things that we have as technologies that we have for decades, centuries, millennia, that allow us to do things that make us stronger, faster, more capable. What we're doing is making those technologies now very small and actually putting them inside of ourselves as opposed to them being outside of ourselves. Wheels make us go quickly, clothing keeps us warm, eyeglasses extend the use of our eyes. So we've had these kinds of things that make us more than human. As long as we've been human, we've created these tools. These are new tools that will cure things that we've had real issues with.
Just amazing.
But do we feel that technology can take us too far? I think back to the time of, say, 300 BC in Alexandria, where they had all this knowledge which disappeared for centuries. If that hadn't disappeared, we would have had the atomic bomb in 1200 rather than 1945.
No.
Would that have changed the world?
No, I don't think we would have come up with the atomic bomb that quickly because of all the other technologies necessary to have created that. But I do think that one of the reasons I write these kinds of books is to not just tell a fun, ripping yarn, but also to inform people what's happening, what are the things that we need to start thinking about as a society, as a civilization, that we are going to change. But we have been changing. We will continue to change. What we call human will just continue to change as we define it, as we change. And we need to start addressing these issues because they're coming faster and faster, especially with these new medical technologies.
So the politics of the world and the socioeconomic have to G2 with what we're able to actually accomplish in the future with technology. I mean,
technology
society,
drives.
we're going to be able to vote. I'm thinking at 6 o'clock on November the 5th, everybody's going to vote for President of the United States, and we're going to, just like The Voice, we're going to know a minute later who the president is. Isn't that a possibility soon?
Possible. Things are often a lot harder than they look.
Okay.
Those kinds of things are a lot harder than they look. It's going to be a long time until brain technologies like I describe are put into everyone. It's quite a slow process, and these are quite hard problems, but the fact that they are being developed, the fact that they are being tested should lead us to those questions that we need to address as both individuals and society. How are we going to use these? Because every tool can be used for good and for evil. You've got, plowshares and swords, and you want to be able to use those tools in a constructive way and not a destructive way.
Right.
Of course, we do destructive in the book because that's dramatic and fun.
Yes, it certainly is.
And as you said, page turning.
It's
Yes,
going to happen too. I mean, people get a hold of that technology. I always thought the beginning of the internet, I remember the very beginning, and I thought when these people are able to, from the closed communities of China and North Korea, can see freedom and see what we have, that it would actually lend itself in North Africa freedom around the world. But guess what? The bad guys learned social media is a way to recruit, and it's turned on itself. So it hasn't happened as I had hoped and dreamed that the internet would.
So there's the positive and the negative. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and everything. And let me hold up this book. Everything is true in this book. That you had something here that I just.
I'm laughing because I know what she's going to say.
Yeah, I've told people over about the Savant. That's the Rain Man. It was the Rain Man was based on Kim Peek, and you said he could read the left page of a book with the left eye and the right page with the right eye simultaneously, and never forget either page for the rest of his life. Now, if the brain can do that. I mean, isn't that just amazing?
It is amazing, and that's one of the things that fascinated me about writing these books is what the brain is capable of and how different people's brains are different.
Yes,
We're all wired a little differently. I mean, I have characters in the book that are definitely wired differently than other characters, and that's from a biological sense. Of course, my hero becomes literally wired.
Yes, he does.
Differently. But yeah, the human brain is remarkable in its flexibility, in its ability to grow, in its ability to change, and it's what makes us us. It's why we're all so different.
These people who can have a calendar in their mind and go back 10 years and tell you Wednesday was the 2nd on May and I was going out to dinner.
Yes.
I mean, that's
I don't have that talent.
You can get it though, right? We're working on it.
Well, and the funny part is, you held up your cell phone before. There's a perfect example. I joke that my cell phone and Google is the third lobe of my brain. Now I don't forget things. Now I have the ability to look up and have recall. I can find out things I didn't know before.
Yes.
Oh, easy.
So take that and imagine that inside your head, which is what happens to our hero. And these are the things that I'm asking people to start thinking about, because we actually do have these capabilities, just right now they're outside of our bodies.
Yes. And the research, I kept thinking as I was reading this, the research, of course you make, you name the names with the acknowledgments, but the scientists you talk to and all, and the surgeon that you must have talked to, because you described the surgery, even how to hotwire a car. Now, how did
That's what made me laugh.
I have a dear friend named Lewis Seiden who is a car broker, and I literally called up Lewis and said,
how do we do it?
How do I hotwire a car? He says, well, start with a vintage Mustang. Sold. So
I have one. How do you do it?
you have to read the book.
In a minute. After the show. You know, when I first heard those commercials when it said, find me the nearest florist shop, and I'm saying, or Pizza House. I mean, and you're in the car and the guy's driving, and the next thing you know, there's the nearest pizza shop. And the car knows where you are, and there's the pizza shop, and the data all comes forward, and you buy a pizza and you're not late to go home.
I know.
I didn't believe those commercials. I didn't think that was real.
Oh, it's going to get a lot more real soon.
Yeah.
What do you have that's maybe advanced to something we're not seeing in the stores right now?
The funny part is I'm not an early adopter.
Oh, you're not?
I'm not, because I see how many iterations technology has to go through. So I like to sit back and let everybody else have version 1.
Yeah.
Let them do the alpha and the beta testing. And then I'll step in when I'm like, okay, this is actually a great product. They've figured it out. And I have a dumb house. I don't have a smart house.
A dumb house.
I have a dumb house. I raise and
You
lower
just
my
lost
own
a lot
drapes. I adjust my own thermostat.
You just lost a lot of readers here.
I know I did. But because especially when we lived out in Malibu and we would have electrical outages all the time.
Right.
Having a smart house, unless you had constant generators,
Right.
was
Just
impossible.
resetting the phones is a pain in the neck.
Right,
I mean,
exactly,
those clocks.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you know, you learn that there's certain things that while it would be wonderful, they're just not that practical yet.
Now, I'm hung up on this, the research. Now, the scientists, did you call them? Did you know them beforehand? Did you?
I started research many years before this came out,
Okay.
and I didn't know them. And I started contacting people. I started contacting people first in the general world of body enhancement, human enhancement. Some people call that transhumanism. And from that point, I got in contact with scientists. A lot of scientists at the time didn't want to talk to me, so I would have to go find their papers, read their scientific papers, find the journals, because they are afraid of popularizing their material because they're afraid of they don't want to make people afraid. They want people to give them their money, develop these technologies, and they don't want anybody to live in fear of these technologies. And what I'm really hoping is by the time you finish the book, you're not in fear of any of these brain technologies. You realize what they're capable of and basically how we have to protect them.
Yes.
That's the really important part.
Yes.
But yeah, in the beginning, a lot of scientists didn't. When the book came out, then scientists became far more interested in talking to me because it became very popular. It was a bestseller in a genre. So yeah, that
How interesting.
much easier to talk to people.
I have an interesting statistic for you that you may or may not know. On the Amazon page, you are 68 reviews ahead of Michael Croydon's Prey, P-R-E-Y. Which was a scary book.
That was a very scary book.
I'm sure you read it.
Yeah. It's
a lot of reviews, over 1,000, 1,600. Oh, well, anyway.
Yeah, no, there were a lot of reviews. There are a lot of reviews.
Yeah,
I thank Amazon for that because I'm actually published through an imprint of Amazon.
Right.
So it's like a traditional publisher within the Amazon publishing.
Acquisition editors and the whole 9 yards.
Everything. I've got marketing and PR, and they're all wonderful. I've got the greatest editor, I think, on the planet.
Great.
But because of Amazon, it was able to get in front of a lot of people.
Yeah.
I was very lucky with that.
That's incredible. I mean, Amazon and, is just going to take over the world.
They're a perfect example of watching what happens with technology.
Yes.
Absolutely.
New technologies.
Yes.
Which was actually made it a perfect fit, both thematically and practically, with this kind of a book. It's one of the reasons I was so fascinated by them is that they really are walking the walk of future communications technologies.
That's good to hear, yeah.
I wanted to talk about something that you may expand on or not. Talked about your daughter's interest in music and the way that she sees the world through music, and I'm I'm very interested in that topic because I'm going to do an anthology that's going to cover that topic. Can you elaborate a little bit about what you meant by that?
Absolutely. And the protagonist in my book, I basically took my daughter Hannah's ability, how her brain is wired naturally, and applied it to my heroes. So Peter Bernhardt and my daughter problem solve through music. My daughter goes through the world with a soundtrack in the back of her mind, and it's either something she's singing at the moment. She constantly sings and hums wherever she goes. She's a singer and a musician. Or it's something she's listening to. Everything gets laid down, every memory, every experience, on this either conscious or subconscious soundtrack. And it's as though the memories are laid down on top of it. So it's how she accesses her information. Different people perceive the world differently. Some are visualists. Some do it through what they hear. Some are very tactile, like it's what they were touching. Some are kinesthetic, it's how they move. And they attach their thoughts to that process. She attaches her thoughts to music. And the way I did it in the book was if he would have a memory or a problem, music would just come up, and it would help him solve his problem. And for her, she takes a test. If she's studying for a test, she's listening to music, and she's taking the test, and she's having recall, which aids that
when
process.
When the refrain came on, the answer to this
and she's a
was.
frighteningly smart young lady. So
I think her mother is too.
Thank you. But she really is, and I see. And one of the other reasons I did it was when I know a lot of artificial intelligence researchers, and almost all of them are musicians, and they have the same capability. And I copied what they told me to do, which was I had my daughter's desk, and then at 90 degrees I had her keyboard, and she had a swivel chair. And she could just go back and forth between her music and her work. And that's what a lot of these guys do. A lot of these researchers have this back and forth between their music and their work, and one feeds the other.
Left brain, right brain working together in unison?
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
Wow, that's remarkable. Can you explain the difference between convergence and singularity?
I don't know if we have enough time. So the singularity is in the way that it gets used in science fiction, not the physics singularity about approaching a black hole.
Right.
The way it's used in science fiction is the point at which an artificial intelligence in a computer is so smart, it can start replicating itself and self-improving itself. So this is a form of intelligence that we have not yet come across in computing. Computers can improve themselves, but not completely by themselves, nor with this imagine a curve where it can start improving itself and replicating itself so quickly, it just outstrips human intelligence in a very short period of time. Convergence is when the different technologies are all brought together. So nanotechnology, biotechnologies, cognitive technologies, robotics are all brought together into single working technologies. So a lot of the things I write about are what would be called convergence technologies, where you're using all these different aspects of technology and putting them all together.
Okay. And you tell your story through characters because you believe you need the empathy in order to get the message across.
Absolutely.
What do you mean?
Well, we're all empathy machines, and humans are wired to tell stories, and it's how we communicate, and it's also how we learn what it's like to be another person. Some of these ideas are quite complex, and we've been talking about some very heady topics. But if you can imagine yourself in the shoes of another who's experiencing these things, it makes it much easier. it's like the spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. If I want to explain to people what's coming, if I do it in the form of a ripping yarn, then I have the ability to communicate these really complex ideas, but you're interested and you care and you want to find out what happens, because that's how our brains are wired. We have been storytellers since the dawn of humanity, and it's how we function as human beings.
And we care about what happens to Peter Bernard.
I hope so.
We do. Yeah. Oh, okay. Wow.
So empathy is important. You really feel you have to tell it through the character. If you had written this as a nonfiction book, you probably wouldn't find a reader or two or three. Or
I'd find some people who enjoy nonfiction, but I wouldn't find the kind of audience mass audience that I have. And honestly, this is just more fun.
Yeah, it is.
You know, it's fun to tell these kinds of stories and get people's reactions, because that's the other thing. It's the reaction that people have and their involvement, and that gets generated through the empathy.
Wow.
Now, did you know when you started this book, did you know where you were going? I mean, did you know did you know the end, or?
Yes,
question.
I'm one of. It's a great question. It's actually a great writing question.
Yep.
Am I an outliner or am I a pantser, as they call it? I'm somewhere in between, because I started writing teleplays and screenplays. I know where I want to be. I know where I want to be at the very end.
Okay.
And I do outlines. But sometimes those outlines change and things get moved around.
Characters
and I
do things on you, don't they?
Oh, they absolutely do.
They
And
do.
you realize, no, that's not going to work. And you get led down different areas. But I did know where I wanted to end up. And I find that for me, that's just, if I don't know where I'm going, I'm in big trouble.
Yeah.
I'm a discovery writer too, as we
I am too.
refer to it.
Yeah, you don't always know the
So
twists
what
and
did we
turns.
discover in your book through your characters that you should walk away from? Is there a message there, a deeper, or a...
I guess there really is a message of hope, as much as I put him through hell in each of these books.
Oh, okay.
He goes through hell in every book. At the end of it, I want you to realize that there is a message of hope, that we as humans are not going to be necessarily outstripped by our own technologies, that we're going to be able to problem solve. We're going to be able to find where we fit into these new worlds, and that change isn't bad. Change is just change. Change happens. And there's really nothing that in some ways we can do about it. So let's have a positive outlook and approach it positively, because things are going to change anyway.
Did you see Midnight in Paris? Did you get
I
to
did.
Isn't that wonderful? Gertrude Stein refers to science fiction when it was called scientific romance back in the 20s.
Yes.
Oh,
But
really?
the thing was, the 1920s, appeared to this guy from modern time, but this woman that he likes has to go back to 1890. It's like, is it always better before? I mean,
We have a nostalgia about
Yes,
what the
we
past
do,
was
we
like,
do.
because also as humans we are by nature optimistic, so we look back at our past in a much more optimistic way
Right.
than it maybe necessarily was.
That's true. That's
And we look at the future with fear because we don't know it and we don't understand it, and I'm trying to say, don't be so fearful.
That's
Here's some
good.
things that are coming,
Yes.
and let's have some fun with this.
That's a good thing.
Wow.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
Inspired by Boy in a Bubble. Did we discuss that, Paul Simon?
No, I heard your interview, one of your interviews, and you mentioned about that song, "The Boy in the Bubble," that played a part in the...
Absolutely. I thought that Paul Simon's lyrics about the potential of technology, again, the positive and the negative, that his song is a more negative spin, but he had a real strong image about the millionaires and the billionaires, and what happens when extreme power comes across extreme technology, and the potential in that. And to me, that was really the birth of this story, because you have extreme power finding a radical technology and what could potentially be dangerous about that if, again, we don't, as a society, start thinking about these things, if they get there first.
Can we solve climate change if that's an issue with the new world, with your technology?
I actually am quite optimistic that if we embrace the changes that need to be made, that we can do something about it. We have to accept it, face it,
accept
acknowledge it,
Right.
face it, and then start acting in a way that starts making positive change. I actually believe we could if we wanted to.
But that's so
Well, that's wonderful to hear.
geopolitical. I mean, if China doesn't do something, we're...
They're actually ahead of us right now.
Well,
they
that's good to
they
hear
are
because they have
closing their coal
problems.
plants.
Yeah.
They are making more sustainable energy, renewable energy than anyone right now. So they are actually acknowledging they're part of the problem. We, as a nation, have yet to quite do it at that
Yes,
scale.
yes.
But they have major problems. They still have to do more cleanup in their rivers and all
Absolutely,
the things that...
no question, absolutely. But they are, from the top down, starting to acknowledge that.
Found this was interesting
That's
this morning, just on the internet. It says, why did European elites try to destroy Native American culture? And the answer came, did not need roads, did not need money, did not need schools, did not need hospital, did not need technology, lived happily and close to community and a deep spiritual interconnection with nature.
Yes.
So that's what, but then I went to this site that this came from a source called Disclosed TV, and the first article that comes up there is 13-year-old invents Tulsa-inspired free energy device for under $15. So I'm saying, this must be an interesting website.
Yeah, Disclosed TV, I'm not quite sure that's a, you know,
It's
that would be real news.
I know. That's a problem, isn't it?
It's a big problem. It's a big problem.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually deal with that in some of the future books,
Yeah.
is the issue of real information. How do we get it? How do we
Because
know it?
you know, you think when the internet came along that we were going to have all this freedom, as I said, and then all of a sudden things get closed down, and the bad guys are using this technology for their own gains.
know.
So it's interesting what technology will lead us to.
And
you know.
and your new book comes out in October.
Yes, October 10th.
And the name?
Identity.
Identity.
So it'll have a similar setup. It'll be ID in the parentheses, entity.
ID, entity?
And entity, so identity.
Yeah, but id?
Well, it could be absolutely
Yeah.
id. It could also be the nature of ID. And
Right. ID.
when you finish Revolution, you see that Peter is profoundly changed. So
I
what is
know.
he? And how will he get out of that jam?
Yes, that
To
ending.
save
was-
humanity again.
Yeah,
we know that you're giving that.
that ending was wonderful
That's
too.
yeah, you're giving away the ending right. How about the third book? You want to tell us the title, or you want to keep that?
Conscience. Con-science. Conscience.
Con science.
Yes. So what happens when, again, technology starts accelerating so quickly, people start wondering, was this such a good thing?
Aha.
And the upheavals that happen.
That's kind of brilliant. I love that. Thank you for doing
That's
that.
great.
Hey,
That's
Judy,
great,
I
isn't
think
it?
we have to wrap this
I
show
think
up.
we do.
My
Wow,
goodness.
it flew by.
I know. Thank you so much,
Thank you so
PJ.
much.
Thank you for having me.
PJ.
Wow, it was a lot of fun.
It was. Do you have? And we learned a lot. Do you have any
I had to before you asked me, but now I have to look them up. You go with
Well,
yours.
I have
I'll
a
see if
very short one.
Go ahead.
But it just seems so true. Books are keys that open many doors. James Rowlands. Boy, haven't we learned that today?
And
Boy,
I
did
have
they ever.
two
Absolutely.
that I did discover here. All great science fiction is, in quotes, be careful for what you wish for.
Uh-huh.
And the second one, in really, really good science fiction, the line between science and the fiction is blurry. And we'll credit Damon Lidilio, who wrote Lost episodes. So there we are.
Wow.
So,
Well, I'm Judy Saxon, and thank you for watching.
and I'm Charlie Redner. It was a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you
PJ.
again.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And